Okay, we are live and we're going to go on one more platform and then we will get going. Good evening, Maureen. Okay. Good evening, Caleb Gittel. Good evening, Ruth. Good evening, Jan. Good evening, Chagai. Good evening, iPhone in hiding. Good evening, Eliyahu. Good evening, Jim, Yaakov. Good to see everyone. Oh, Marjorie and Dwayne are joining as well. Look at that. We're getting a beautiful crowd. We are going to begin today on we're going to begin on page 982, 983 in our Chumash. And we're going to get going now that we're on all our platforms. So I appreciate everyone coming a day later. Interestingly enough, there's a good chance that next week it will be on a different day as well. I was invited to sit on a rabbinic panel symposium. I don't even know what you call it. There's a friend of ours who lives in Park City, Utah, and he invited his 6 rabbis of 6 shuls or 7 shuls, Chabad houses around the country that he's involved in, that he supports. Bozeman, University of Wisconsin in Madison, Pleasanton, California in the Tri-Valley, of course, Park City and Salt Lake, and I want to say 1 or 2 others. So he's inviting the Jewish community in Park City to come hear from all his rabbis. So I'm flying out just for a few hours, for the night to Salt Lake, but I believe it's Wednesday night. So we'll either have class on Tuesday or on Thursday, and I shall keep you posted. Maybe in tomorrow's email, I'll say it. So if you get the weekly email, pay attention. Anyhow, we are in Parshas Pinchas. So we ended last week's Torah portion with Pinchas slaying the leader of the tribe of Shimon, Zimri, while he was cohabitating publicly with Cosby, the Midianite princess. He slew them together with one spear straight through both of them. Actually, he did it straight through the genitalia. He did it to make sure that everyone should know exactly why he's taking them out. You want to behave that way publicly against all norms and all morality and all God-given Torah. So it takes him out. And at the end of last week's parsha, we read that there were 24,000 Jews that died in a plague. And once Pinchas ended the plague by killing these 2 people who were defying God's rule, the plague ceased. There was no more plague anymore. Now, going into our parsha, Pinchas, so after God proclaims that Pinchas is going to be gifted with the covenant of peace, going to a theme that I've shared many times, that not everyone who slays others is an evil warrior, and not everyone who walks around with peace bumper stickers is a peaceful person. Some of the most nasty, horrible, inhumane people you'll ever meet are the ones that scream all day about peace. But if you ever mess with their ego or their philosophy, they will slay you in a heartbeat without any mercy. And some of the people who are very, very peaceful recognize that sometimes you have no other choice but to take out evil. And that was Pinchas's job. I think we see a lot of a lot of that is expressing itself in the last 2 years of the way the world deals with Israel. The Druze this week, the Druze in southern Syria were being slaughtered, literally like sheep to the slaughter, by Muslim Syrians, and Israel intervened to protect the Druze. And what did the UN do? They condemned Israel for invading Syria. Because not everyone that says they're about peace and they're against war are actually against war or for peace. It's just words, and they're nasty, nasty people. And not everyone who kills others in self-defense or to protect humanity is evil. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. All of that aside, that was just a little of my evening rant. So those who are... It looks like Mitchell. So why don't you open for him? Yeah, I'm almost certain. I could tell my clients. Yeah. Right? There you go. So after all that's over, and 24,000 Jews cease dying in the plague. So here in chapter 26, it begins with these words. It was after the plague, God spoke to Moshe and to Elazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saying, take the sum of the entire congregation of the children of Israel, include in this census all those from 20 years old and upwards according to their paternal house, all who are fit to go out to the army of Israel. Moshe and Elazar the priest spoke with the people in the plains of Moab by the Jordan near Jericho, saying, you must be counted from the age of 20 years and upward, as God commanded Moshe and the children of Israel when they're coming out of Egypt. So now that the plague was over, God commanded Moshe and Elazar to create a census. In other words, let's find out the number, how many Jews have survived, what is the number now after the Jewish people had died from this terrible plague at Baal Peor. And just to remind you that the plague happened after, I mentioned it in Shul on Shabbos, but not all of you were there, that after Bilam tried cursing the Jews 3 times and it didn't work, he kept giving most beautiful blessings. So eventually, Bilam gave Balak, the king of Moab, some advice. His advice was, if you really want to get the Jews, get them to sin against God, and then God will take them out. So what did Balak do? He took the most beautiful Moabite women, the most attractive women, put them right in front of the Jewish men, had them seduce the Jewish men. Many, many Jewish men fell for their seduction. And of course, God was fuming, and Bilam was right. God got upset, and Jews started dying like flies. Pinchas intervenes, the plague stops, 24,000 died in the plague, and now we're doing a census through Moshe and Elazar the priest, at that time the high priest, because Aaron already passed away, to count how many Jews survived after the plague. Rashi comes along, Rashi in our Torah portion, and says as follows. It's a parable for a shepherd in which wolves entered his herd and started killing some of his sheep, and now he's going to count how many are left. So the analogy here is, right, there's a shepherd, wolves attack the herd, not all the sheep survived. Now we're going to count how many sheep have survived and to see what we're left with. It's a beautiful analogy, right? The Jewish people are the sheep. We'll figure out in a moment who the wolves are. Something Montanans can relate to. You know, since I moved here, all we talk about in the newspaper is the electric bills from Northwest Energy and wolves. The wolf, all the rules about the wolves. Are they endangered? They're not endangered. Can you kill them? Can you not kill them? A ganzen Tag, they're busy with the wolves the whole day. So we can relate. It's a beautiful Rashi, right? There's a shepherd. Except there's another plague that happens to the Jewish people, and that is in the book of Exodus and Shemos. After the Jews left Egypt, they had the ultimate of all sins. What was the ultimate of all sins? Very good, Seth. The sin of the golden calf. What does it say at the sin of the golden calf? It says a similar parable, but not exactly the same. So pay attention. By the golden calf, it says the parable of a sheep that was very beloved by its rancher, by its owner, and they were plagued with a disease, not by wolves, but a disease. And when the disease ceased from happening, that they were in the clear, the owner, the rancher, told the shepherds, please do me a favor, please go count my sheep. Let me know how many have survived, because they're really, really precious to me. So when the Jews died by the sin of the golden calf, we have a similar Rashi, but there are very interesting differences. Let's zoom in for a moment. Let's go a little deeper into what those differences are. Let's start with the three primary differences. In Exodus, who is asking for the sheep to be counted? Rashi said, there's sheep who died from a plague, and the owner, the rancher, asks the owner, the rancher asks the shepherd to go count. But who's the one that's concerned about the sheep? The rancher, not the shepherd. Over here in our parsha, after the story with the Moabite women, it says that the shepherd is concerned. It doesn't speak about the owner, it doesn't speak about the rancher, it speaks about the shepherd who was hired to shepherd the sheep, to shepherd the flock. So in Exodus, at the sin of the golden calf, it talks about a rancher and a shepherd, and the rancher is asking the shepherd to go and give him a census. Over here, there's no mention of the owner, just the mention of the shepherd. That's number one. Number two, in Exodus, I sort of hinted to it. In Exodus, it talks about a plague, like various diseases that what do they call it over here? A mad cow disease, or what's the one the bisons get? It's in the news also all the time. Brucellosis, right? That's what I see. I read the paper. Brucellosis, I have no idea, but it was. So in Kisisa, Exodus, after the sin of the golden calf, it talks about the sheep being the victim of a disease, of a plague, of some type of bodily health issue. But over here in Numbers, when it talks about the Moabite women and the plague that followed, it talks about the wolves attacking the pack, the herd. Why over there is it a natural disease and over here is it the wolves? And number three, in Exodus, Rashi seems to emphasize that the owner, the rancher, is obsessed or in love or super, the sheep are super precious to him. Over here, he doesn't mention that at all. Over here, he mentions, the shepherd wants to know how many are left after they died from the wolves attacking. It doesn't talk about the appreciation or the excitement that the owner of the sheep has for his flock. So what I'm about to share with you is from a beautiful talk from the Rebbe, printed in volume 18 of the Rebbe's edited talks on the book of Numbers. So the Rebbe says as follows. We have a bigger problem here when assessing these verses. It says, I just read from inside at the beginning of 26, it was after the plague, right? After the plague, God said to go count how many are left, right? We're counting them because there was a plague in which 24,000 Jews died. 24,000 Jews is a lot of people. Actually, if you think about it, at the sin of the golden calf, 3,000 died. And over here, 24,000 died, which tells you how upset and angry Hashem was after what the Jews did with the Midian, with the Moabite women. But it's clear from the verse that the census, the counting, was coming because those 24,000 people died in the plague. But that makes it even more curious for the following reason. 24,000 died in the plague. But if you look back in Parshas Balak, just at the end of last week's Torah portion, you saw there's a verse. I'll tell you actually where you could see it for yourself. Let me find it. If you go back to page 975 at the end of Balak, it says, God said to Moshe, verse 4 in chapter 25, God said to Moshe, take all the leaders of the people to judge those who worshipped idols and hang them before God in view of the sun so everyone can see, then God's fury will withdraw from Israel. Moses said to the 88,600 judges of Israel, each of you should kill 2 men who became attached to Baal Peor. So 88,000 times 2. Almost 200,000. There's another number. I think this is coming from Rashi. There's a medrash says that it was 78,000. 78,000 means that there was 156,000 because each one killed 2. We're talking here that in the process of this disaster, this epic disaster of plague and sin and seduction and mass causation of sin, 150 to 200,000 Jews were killed as a result of the idolatry that they committed with not the adultery, but the idolatry, right? The Moabite women got them first into adultery and then into idolatry. How long do you think it takes from when an idolatrous woman seduces a man into her bed before she convinces him to pray to Jesus? Not long. First of all, men are capable, for having relationships, men are capable of selling their grandmother on eBay. That's number one. Number two, obviously, if you're in a state of seduction, you're not mentally fully focused, so you'll do anything. You'll bow to the cross, you make whatever you want. Just whatever she wants, just give me more of whatever you gave me just now. Whatever service you provided, I want more of it. So you want me to bow to your cross? You want me to bow to your idol? No problem. If I told you how many people I know, both men and women, who literally gave, or at least in a public form, gave up their faith in Judaism and joined another religion, or at least got very comfortable with other religions because they wanted to make their loved one happy, your hair would stand up. So here we have a situation where the women seduced the men to adultery, from adultery to idolatry. Talk about 2 of the 3 biggest sins of Judaism, right? The third one is murder. The 3 cardinal sins of Judaism are adultery, idolatry, and murder. I know in America we like talking about homosexuality all day because why not? You know, there's nothing better to do. I tell the pastors all the time in Bozeman, the priest, the pastor said the only reason you guys talk about homosexuals all day is because if you talked about adultery, you'd lose your whole congregation. So it's easier to pick on the homosexual than to talk about the real sin of homosexuals is an issue in the Torah, but adultery is in the 10 Commandments. Don't talk about that. Your pews in your church will be empty. So the Moabite women followed Bilam's advice, seduced many, many men, over 200,000, 150 to 200,000 were taken out through a din Torah, through a judgment. They were judged by these judges, and each one had to kill 2 of them. And then in addition to that, 24,000 died of a plague. And yet over here, when it comes to the census, when it comes to the post-plague census, we're focused on the 24,000. Why are we not focused on the 150 to 200,000? Why are we so zoomed in on the 24,000, which seems inconsequential as it relates to the much larger number of 150 to 200,000 that died as a result of the same situation, but in a different form? What's the problem? 3 million Jews can't have 88,000 judges. Look how many we appoint in America.
How many will come to Sanhedrin?
71. That's the Supreme Court of Judaism, the Sanhedrin. These are regional. These are judges, people that studied. They became rabbis. They have dayanas. They have the ability to be a judge. They were learned Jews, and they made rulings. So the question is, why are we so obsessed about the census post the 24,000 people being murdered, the 24,000 people dying in the plague, versus the 150 to 200,000 that also died as a result of their sin, but it was in the same context of the same story? So to answer this question, Rashi was very, very specific about his words in the parable. Rashi said, let me remind you, Rashi said over here, the parable of a shepherd in which wolves attack the herd, the flock, and now he's counting how many are left. So when you count sheep after there was an attack, normally you'd say the obligation or the interest or the or the wanting to know of how many are left is both mutual for the owner, the rancher, and the shepherd. Except they count for different reasons. Why does a rancher count his sheep? Because it's his flock. It's his animals. You ever see the way these farmers talk about their animals, the way they deal with their animals?
I see him with binoculars counting.
Binoculars, especially if it's a big ranch, they're looking to see if there was any attacks. I don't want to say family. Family is a big word, but they're very devoted. There's that famous Paul Harvey clip. I keep saying that I should send it to everyone. The Paul Harvey clip where he talks about how the 6 days of creation, the seventh day God rested, on the eighth day God created the farmer. It's a very, very beautiful Paul Harvey clip that I remember hearing when I was a yeshiva student. Anyone that messages me, I'll send it to you. Maybe I'll post it on social media. It's really, really good because he talks about the work that farmers put in. So a rancher is counting his sheep because it's his sheep. Chaviva, it's my beloved animals. But the shepherd counts the sheep because he has a job. His job as a shepherd is to make sure that the sheep are taken care of. And if he messes up, you got to count. But there's a difference in the owner, the rancher, who's counting because it's his beloved farm and his beloved ranch, and the shepherd who gets paid to do it. And that's why you see a huge difference between Exodus by the sin of the golden calf and the situation here with the Baal Peor. Every time there's some kind of issue that goes on with sheep, the owner, the rancher, no matter what the reason is, whether it's wolves or disease, the owner wants to know, where are we? But the shepherd is mostly concerned when the results had to do with his or her negligence. A disease generally is not the negligence of the shepherd. Wolves getting to the sheep is very much in the context of the obligation, the responsibility of the shepherd, and the result of it is very much on his watch and on his responsibility level. Therefore, when there's a plague and animals die from, brucellosis or mad cow disease, or there's an avian flu, whatever diseases fly around America on the farms, if it happened from a natural disease, from a plague, from COVID, then the shepherd is going to count because it's his job, but he's not going to be devoted. He's not going to be freaked out. He's not going to feel a sense of deep, deep responsibility because at the end of the day, he knows the truth that it was out of his control. But when there's wolves, his job is to control the wolves. That's his job. And if the wolves ended up attacking the flock, then he's counting that in a very different way because he recognizes that it's his obligation. And that's what Rashi's really teaching us here. In Parshas Ki Sisa with the sin of the golden calf, it was similar to, let me go backwards for a moment. When you're dealing with, there's a shepherd, and then there's the rancher, the owner. In this case, the rancher is God. We are the sheep. The Jewish people are the sheep, and God is our owner. The shepherd is Moses. When it came to the situation with the Moabite women seducing the Jewish men, it was like wolves attacking the herd. How come? You see wolves coming. You are the shepherd. Your job is to do everything in your power immediately to stop what's about to go down. What did Moshe do? Nothing. Pinchas came running and said, don't you know the halacha?
That's why he did.
And Moshe said, no, I forgot the halacha. Well, Pinchas says, I remember it. So Moshe said, the one who brought the news, the mail should go and read the letter, meaning you remembered, go take him out. So that's why Pinchas, but Moshe in those moments, and we don't know exactly how many moments it was, but there was a period of time that Moshe didn't know what to do. His job as a shepherd was to know what to do. And because he didn't do it and waited until Pinchas came and did it, people died. In other words, the 150 to 200,000 that died, that was a halachic thing. They were brought to a tribunal. They had sinned. And because they sinned and they were judged, it It wasn't really Moshe's fault. There's a system in Judaism. But the 24,000 that died of a plague, that was a plague that Moshe could have stopped. And he knew that he could have stopped it. His job as a shepherd was to stop the wolves, to stop the Moabite women from seducing and attacking the herd, and he didn't do it. And even when Pinchas came and he didn't know the end game, he couldn't remember the halacha, Pinchas had to go take him out. And for that, God says, I want a census. And what does Rashi say? The parable is of a shepherd, not a rancher. Because in this case, it was the shepherd who messed up. It was Moshe, had nothing to do with the rancher. Moshe could have stopped it. Huh? Oh, very good. Pinchas took on the role of a shepherd temporarily, which is why he was greatly honored. But yes, the shepherd dropped the ball. It would be the equivalent of another shepherd seeing what's going on and say, hey, you know, the wolves are attacking your herd. And the shepherd goes, really? The herd? I mean, I don't even know what to do. No, well, then I'll go. Pinchas was the shepherd that ran and brought salvation. In Kisisa, by the sin of the golden calf, it wasn't Moshe's negligence. Moshe went up to the mountain to get the Torah. The Jews went and sinned with the golden calf. There was an equal punishment. The shepherd and the rancher were both fuming. Moshe and the owner, Moshe and God were both upset. It wasn't unique to the shepherd. And therefore, over there, when it talks about, it talks specifically about the rancher there as well, in the sin of the golden calf, because it's God. It talks about how much God appreciates, the owner appreciates the herd, because it is true. Over here, it's not relevant. You're a shepherd. It's not about your appreciation. It's about you doing your job. And over there, it talks about that they died of a plague, meaning they died of a natural occurrence, meaning it wasn't the shepherd's fault. There's no way a shepherd, over there, the shepherd couldn't protect them. Over here, he could have, and he didn't. And to me, as I studied this, it wasn't about Moshe's punishment. It was about a recognition. By the way, there's no greater punishment for a leader than to have an opportunity to protect your flock and to fail. I actually want to touch on that for a minute, then I'm going to go back to what I was going to say before. I think leadership in today's world lacks guts and gumption. Being a leader, being a leader means that when someone's part of your flock, right? They're part of the sheep that you're shepherding, and someone's coming for them. And that could be in a variety, it could be in a whole host of ways that people's lives could be tormented and situations can arise, and it's never fun. The job of a shepherd is to be there for their flock and to stand up for their flock. I'm not saying in every case, sometimes it's not defendable, but as a general rule, you're there for your people. Your job is to hold their hand through the toughest times and through the hard times and in the uncomfortable times. Not just when it's easy to stand at a podium and give a sermon. When there's tough situations. And the easiest thing, and many leaders do that today, they throw their best friends under the bus. In 5 seconds, they get up by a microphone. I could never condone this behavior and blah, blah, blah. They give excuse me, you're their shepherd. They messed up in life, and you don't get to just throw them under the bus. That's not a shepherd. You're just a powerful, egocentric person who yaps at people but doesn't really give a damn about them. Being a leader means you need to care about them. But going back to what I was going to say is that one of the things I learned as I studied this parsha and studied these particular verses about the plague and the census and the difference between the sin of the golden calf and the sin over here and Moshe's intervention or his lack of intervention is that the role of a shepherd is to show up when the wolves are coming and protect your flock. And obviously that manifests itself in many, many different ways. God ultimately makes decisions, right? If there's going to be a plague of brucellosis, sometimes it's out of human. I mean, I know we love blaming humans for everything, but sometimes God just makes like a COVID, he makes a plague that takes, does its thing. But the shepherd's job, the Moshe's job, is to make sure that when there's wolves when there's a world of craziness and there's a world of haters, right? The Medrash says that the Jewish people are like a one sheep among 70 wolves. There's 70 nations of the world. I know everyone thinks that the world really loves us deep, deep down. It's only Spain and Ireland and the Middle East and part of America and most of Canada and a little bit of Mexico. But most of the world, if you include people that live in Togo and in Tahiti, you have 17 people around the world that really like the Jews. So the Medrash tells us 3,000 years ago that the Jews are like one sheep among 70 wolves, which means we have each other. We have shepherds that are there to help us, protect us from the 70 wolves, and let us not be fooled that we can rely on anyone but Almighty God, our dear rancher, and his shepherds who he hired to take care of us, which is the Rebbes of the world, who are there to take care of the Jewish people and guide us in the most tumultuous times. But to think that the job of a Rebbe, the job of a Moses, is not to solve all the world's problems. The job of a Moses is to hold the sheep, to protect their sheep, to guide their sheep away from the wolves, and to sometimes stand between the wolves and their flock to make sure that the wolves don't have access to their sheep. That is their job. A lot of times people say to me, I just daven straight to Hashem. I don't need a Rebbe. Of course you daven. Of course you pray straight to Hashem. I never pray to the Rebbe. That's idolatry. So what do you need a Rebbe for? What do you need Moses for? Right? You don't think today they say, oh, what do you need a Rebbe for? And 3,000 years ago, 3,300 years ago, they said, what do you need Moses for? That's like asking a sheep why they need a shepherd. You ask a sheep why you need a shepherd. What do you need a shepherd? The sheep will tell you, I'm not even sure why I need a shepherd. I'm a sheep. Sometimes sheep don't even realize that they need a shepherd. Look, you see goats and sheep running around and white-tailed deer running around. What do you need a sheep? What do you need a shepherd for? So the sheep doesn't necessarily know that it needs a shepherd. But the rancher, God, understands that the flock are many, the sheep are many. A lot of them are tzafloigen. A lot of them are messed up in the head. You ever see sheep running in circles? They don't know what they're doing. They're not the smartest animals. The reason why we say sheep to the slaughter, because sheep are not the smartest animal. You could convince the Quincy told me for years that sheep can do whatever you tell them to do, they do it. They have no seichel. They don't listen. The animal rights people are going to scream at me soon. They're not smart animals, sheep. That's why we say sheep to slaughter. So sometimes the rancher says, the sheep need a shepherd. So I'm going to hire Moses. He's not going to be their new owner. He's not going to be the new rancher. He's just going to be their guide. So when they're stupid and Moabite women could seduce them, and the UN could seduce them, and the anti-Semites of the world could seduce them, and you could convince them to be sheep, right? I am a sheep against the shepherd. I'm a sheep against the rancher. Queers for Palestine. Or whatever cockamamie thing they'll come up with every day. When those moments happen, it's clear that the Jewish people need incredible, devoted, wholesome, holistic Moseses, Rebbes, Shluchim, guides, shepherds that say, you know what, Bubala, you look a little lost. Let me help you. Let me help you so you don't become, they have the buffalo jump, where the Indians, the Native Americans convinced the buffalo to go right off the cliff. How many Jewish sheep go right off the cliff? Because people are guiding them off the cliff. The Moabite women of 2025 are getting them off the cliff, and it's our job as shepherds that work for the Moses, shepherds that work for the Rebbe. Someone says, what does Chabad Shluchim do? Why are you living in Montana? 100%. One of the hardest jobs in the world. But it's one of the most blessed jobs in the world to be a shepherd. Because every time you help another Jew, and sometimes even a non-Jew, not walk off a cliff, not be a stupid sheep who buys whatever garbage the Moabite women are selling them, whether it's idolatry or adultery or whatever else they're selling. Our job is to show them that it might feel good temporarily, but long term, it's bad news for you. You're going to end up like the 24,000 in the plague or the 200,000 that were hung. Don't do it to yourself. You are better than that. Yes, you're a sheep, and yes, your master is God, and it seems very distant, but here is the system. If you follow the shepherd will help you stay strong and connected to the rancher who loves you with every fiber of his or her being, and you won't end up in the trap of stupidity, insanity, and insane people. Don't convince yourself for a moment. The world right now, I think long term it's very good because there's some clarity going on. As the prophet says, things will become clarified. It's getting clarified. There's Meshuggayim in the world. There's truly cuckoo. There's a world with a lot of insane people who don't recognize the most basic fundamentals of morality, of ethics, of biology. I mean, it's just cuckoo land. But why does it have to bother me? It doesn't have to bother me because I'm not beholden to cuckoo land. I'm beholden to a Torah, and I have a shepherd. And sometimes I am a shepherd. And my job is to tell the flock, listen, there's a wonderful rancher who owns this ranch. He's the creator and the director and the chief farmer rancher of this world that we have. It's Almighty God. And the ultimate protection comes because God is running the show, and he hired incredible shepherds to go out there, rebbes, to ensure that the wolves don't come close. And when they do, we take out the wolves. We are ready to stand up to the wolves. Some Jews are not. They get uncomfortable. Just this week, I was away with Chavi, and it was sunny. One day it was very, very hot. So I had a baseball cap on. But the minute I came to anywhere where there was other humans, including last night sitting in the Delta Lounge, I made sure to take off my baseball cap. So there's 150 people sitting in the lounge. I don't want them to think I'm a goy. Took off my cap. I want to make sure they know I'm a Jew. I stood up to daven mincha. They need to know it's a Jew. I went into a bookstore in the middle of Minnesota, and it said old bookstore, old books. I went in. I said maybe I'll find some ancient Jewish book. Be cool to find some cool Jewish book. I couldn't find any, but they had a language section: Chinese, Spanish, French. So I went to he looked like an old-fashioned, like the old school. He had glasses like Harry Potter. The whole store looked like I went back about 400 years in history. I said to the guy, I'm looking for Hebrew books. Do you ever get Jewish or Hebrew books? So every once in a while we get it, but he didn't have any that he could find on the shelves for me. But I was happy to do it. You need to let the world know who you are. I'm part of a flock, and I have a shepherd. And then there's a rancher, and I'm part of the greatest ranch in the world with the greatest ranch owner. And he gave me incredible shepherds. And I have nothing to be ashamed of. And so it's so important for us to internalize that and realize that the job of a Rebbe is not to be the job of God. It's two separate jobs. God is the rancher. The Rebbe is someone here? Should we start shooting now? Tell them the wolves are coming. May we appreciate the shepherds in our lives. May we appreciate the Rebbes who guided the flock to be strong against the wolves. And may we always celebrate the fact that we are part of a ranch, a universe with an incredible rancher named Almighty God who guides us, protects us, and loves us and wants only the best of us. And when there's a plague, there's nothing he wants more than after the plague to count us again, to remember how many there are of us, how much he appreciates our numbers, both quality and quantity, until we merit a time when there will be no more death, there will be no more plagues, there will be no more seduction, there will be no more Moabite seductive women. But the coming of Moshiach Tzidkenu may be speedily in our days, amen. Be inspired, be uplifted. Let me just make a decision now so I don't confuse everybody. Class next week will be Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. This way, we don't have to leave everyone in suspense and confuse you. Eliyahu, you won't have to email me. Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, we're going to have Parsha class. Sei gesund, have a wonderful Shabbos, and we'll see you back here next week. Be'ezer Hashem Yisborech. Sei gesund.